Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter Select, a seasonal podcast where we bounce back and forth between a series exploring its evolution, design, and legacy. For Season 4, we are covering the Fast and the Furious series. My name is Max Robertson. I am joined, as always, by Logan Moore. Hi, Logan.
Max, this podcast, this is my Mexico.
Let's go. I love it. I love how you just come up with these lines from the movie. You bring
I
them
legitimately
in.
don't know how I'm going to, until like the moment we start recording. Like I don't plan this
that's what
ahead.
I love. I can tell you're coming up with it on the spot, and that's what I love about it, because we've watched Tokyo Drift for this episode. You might be wondering, 6th episode, Tokyo Drift, what's going on here? If you haven't been following from the beginning of this season, where you're watching in chronological order, and in Fast and Furious in chronological order means that Tokyo Drift takes place after Fast and Furious 6, making this the 6th movie in the
Does it though?
timeline.
There's a whole lot of flip phones in this film. There's a whole lot of early 2000s iconography that was not in the previous films we've seen. Are these really in chronological order? I'm not sure.
I don't know. Maybe in Japan, the only piece of technology they're behind in is the cell phone, and they just have really high quality flip phone cameras that can stream live video. So maybe that's the secret. If you really think about it, today we have flip smartphones that can fold in half and flip. So maybe Japan is actually 15 years ahead of the trend and just had flip phones with HD cameras.
The Razor's coming back, baby. 2022, year of the Razor. We're gonna bring back.
The Razor already came back. Razor's been back.
Singular is gonna come back soon too. They're gonna take over AT&T.
T-Mobile will buy it. It'll be T-Mobile Singular Sprint Mega Power. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, so let's get right into the general history and info of this film before we start talking more about our own thoughts on it. And we've got a guest this episode that we're going to fold in here as well in just a couple minutes. Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift came out on June 16th, 2006. This was the first film directed by Justin Lin, who has directed the past 3 episodes we've done here. Producer this time around, once again, was Neal H. Moritz. The writer was Chris Morgan. It
was his first Fast and Furious movie, too.
Yeah, so this was a lot of people's first Fast film. The actors this time around were primarily Lucas Black, Bow Wow, and Sung Kang. The composer was Brian Tyler. The stunt coordinator was Terry Leonard. And this film's budget was approximately $85 million, and it made $159 million at the box office, which is a far cry from the $800 million that Fast 6 made last time. But again, we're going back in time here before the series got really big, so...
It's interesting to think, though, that's a 6-7 year difference, and we've nearly, 4 times the money, 3 times?
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it before in one of the previous episodes, but wasn't this movie originally planned to be direct to DVD?
It was. I was going to bring it up. I wanted to talk about that in a minute.
So $160 million box office for something that you originally were planning to just shoot direct to stores on DVD is pretty good. I got to imagine that they were pretty happy with that. Sadly, the critical consensus is a bit different. Critics on Rotten Tomatoes gave this one, it sits at a 38% overall. General viewers do like it quite a bit more, though, at a 69. Nice. And it sits at, so viewers like this one a little bit more, which is what I think is going to make for one of the interesting conversation pieces here as we move forward with this episode, because our guest this episode is none other than our old friend, Michael Ruiz, who is here with us now. Michael, hello.
Hi. How are you
doing? I'm okay.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm good.
So I mentioned this, but this is a fan favorite within the Fast franchise, and I believe we've had you on this episode because this is the one that you have said is your favorite, and was the one that you wanted to talk about with us, correct?
Yeah, I think the last note on my note says this is just watching it again just made me realize that it is actually still my favorite out of all of them.
Okay.
And I think the last time I watched, I think not too long ago, I finally watched 10, the Cena one, which
Oh,
is the
9.
newest one, I think. Or 9, yeah.
F9, the fast
Yeah,
saga.
F9. So I just watched that one, and usually Amber and my wife, will watch them every so often. So, yep, this
Did she
one is
watch
definitely
this
my
one with
favorite
you?
one. She did. Yep.
What are her thoughts on it?
She likes it. She think it's good.
Okay.
I don't think it's her favorite for sure. Especially like those first 3, because especially the first one has not aged well. But I don't think it has, at least. But the
Tell me you don't like a tuna fish sandwich?
Tell me you don't like a bunch of dudes stealing DVD players out of the back of a truck.
I think really out of the first 2, the only thing that aged well was We Hungry, and that's about it. But yeah, I don't know. She probably likes the latter
Ejecto
ones.
is also pretty good.
That one is pretty good. That's
Basically,
Tyrese,
Roman.
right?
Roman's what's aged
Yeah,
well.
Roman has aged well. Yes.
Yeah, Roman's good.
What are your 2? I want to toss this to both of you guys before I get into my own thoughts on this movie and my own history with this one, because I have talked in some of the previous episodes about how I did have some exposure to this movie of all the movies in the series beforehand. But I guess for both of you, Mike, we'll just stick with you. What's your general history with this movie? Did you see it in theaters back in the day? And you've already talked about your own thoughts on it, but what's your own history with the film, if you really have one?
I kind of do. I just remember watching. So I remember watching these movies with like my dad, because my dad was really into cars and stuff. And in turn, like when I was a kid, I was really into cars. I'm not so much into them anymore. I think cars are cool or whatever. But this one kind of, I guess in a weird way, it's like probably a mixture of this and then playing, which I guess are 2 different kinds of cars, but like playing like Dirt. I don't know if you guys know that game.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of got me more into like why I have like my Mazda, or like why I like hatchbacks and more like Japanese style cars, and why I gravitate towards those, like your Subaru WRXs, your Lancers, which was one of the cars in here, like kind of those things. Like I definitely gravitate more liking those than like any sort of like American made car, like a Ford or whatever. So, I mean, in terms of that, like, I guess this might have been the reason why I kind of like that stuff. But I think I did see this in theaters. I don't remember that at all. Like, I probably just went into the theater. I was like, yep, that was a fun movie. That was great. And that's about it. I guess me liking this more has come down to, I think we've talked on other podcasts on like Model Citizen Show or whatever, where I have terrible taste in TV shows and movies as of recent. Terrible. I just like to have fun. And I think this one's like a really good example of like kind of dumb, like really dumb, but still like, I don't know, it's got a lot of heart and it's still fun to watch. And they have like good chase scenes and stuff. And the story there is goofy with the Yakuza and stuff, but otherwise, yeah, I just think it's a fun ride. I think the main character, though, I don't know like why he was chosen. Like I don't understand.
Cowboy.
Yeah,
Gaijin.
it's just like there is nothing about him that is like, man, I like that. Like I like that guy. Not necessarily like, it's just, I don't know. Like the look of I don't want to. I don't know. It's kind of
no.
weird to say,
He
but,
looks
like,
like generic
Yeah,
early 2000s white man.
Yeah, it's just like it's just some guy, and I'm like, okay. I don't
Like compared
to
to the other main protagonists in this series, where you have Vin Diesel, who's a big, strong, muscly man, and Paul Walker, who's devastatingly good-looking with his blue eyes piercing through your soul. This guy's just like very generic looking. Yeah.
It's not even just like other people in the franchise, it's like other people in the movie, you know?
That too,
like in the
yeah.
same movie. Like you've
got
Bow Wow.
Bow Wow.
You got Han, who ends up being like my personal favorite character.
I don't know how he dies.
Does he?
I've seen the other ones, and I do know he comes back.
But just I forgot what the girl's name is. The villain dude,
Mila.
like all these people, very good, like cool looking people, and then you got this one dude. Like, and I think maybe that's the point. I guess I don't know.
Makes
but
him seem more like a fish out of water, perhaps.
yeah.
I think That's absolutely what they're going for.
And also, like, you could be this person, like this, like an average, just some average guy, you know? So, yeah, it was good. I love this movie. It's great.
Max, when did you first see this one? What are your thoughts on it? Did you rent this one at home? Did your aunt make you have to close your eyes at any of the scenes?
No torture scenes in this movie, so no closing of the eyes. I don't remember the first time I saw it. It was definitely at home at some point in the intervening years, because basically after Too Fast, Too Furious, I was at some point I'd watched these movies up in order all the way through, so I've been on since then. But I did end up actually seeing this movie in theaters. It just wasn't in 2006. It was in 2021, back when movie theaters were starting to reopen again, and they were bringing old movies back. And I think in the lead up to Fast 9, they were playing old Fast and Furious movies. And so I actually saw this last year in the theaters. And it was Abby's first time seeing it, which was also pretty fun to see it on the big screen. But this movie is so cool. Just the drifting mentality in Tokyo, it's just all that wrapped up into it makes it such a very cool movie. Not like, I always have distinct memories of when I've watched this movie. Another time was I was watching it on my iPad mini in line at a GameStop, waiting to pre-order a NES Amiibo, because that was the day Fast and Furious 7 came out. And so I was watching Tokyo Drift before going to see Fast and Furious 7. I just have always loved this movie. It's definitely, like Tokyo, or like Too Fast, Too Furious, this one's always cool. And I feel like this is the one everyone talks about loving a lot. Like Tokyo Drift has always stood out, especially in the older movies, as, oh, you gotta watch Tokyo Drift. Like Tokyo Drift's the cool one. And I think part of that is because it is set in Japan and it's a fresh slate. No old school characters.
I also think it's
No family.
I think it's our age group and like the stuff that preceded it, because you think about like this probably, and I'm not entirely sure, I don't know the timeline, but like this is also when Need for Speed, the one where
The good one.
the good one, I can't remember which one it's called. It's not Carbon. I can't remember.
It's not Most
Carbon-
Wanted, is it?
Carbon
not
is a good one for sure.
Underground. Need for Speed
yeah.
Underground. So it's like when that was coming out, and which was an amazing one with like the tuning and stuff like that, or even like the Rockstar game, Midnight Club, like that was out too. Like I feel like this was like coming out around that same time, and those had those kind of cars in those games, like Spotlight on those kind of cars. So
Real-time follow-up, Need for Speed. This movie came out in 2006, so the Need for Speed that year was Carbon, was 2006, but the year before was Most Wanted. And 2003 and 2004 were Underground 1 and 2, so it's kind of leading into, but it was that era of Need for Speed where it was good, because those are all really fairly solid Need for Speed games. So
yeah,
it was definitely.
It just
that
feels
time.
like it's definitely just like that time, and so like definitely in our age group would definitely love Tokyo Drift more than
We talked about with Fast 1 how that movie was kind of the precursor to all that stuff happening. And this movie came out in the midst of all of those games being popular. And so, yeah, that tracks and makes more sense.
I also think, at least for me and Logan, Mike, you're a little bit older than us, but 2006, I was like 12. Like, I think this is a perfect 12-year-old movie. Kind of.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just cool enough. It's way cooler than you are at 12. So you're like, this is awesome. So it definitely was something that grabbed me early on.
I was in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I was pretentious, so I probably hated it at the time. I was one of the kids that I was like, oh, Casablanca is my favorite movie of all time. And
You're telling me, so younger Mike would not have liked the Resident Evil saga?
No, he would not have liked he would have liked the first movie, but not the rest of the movies. Now, the fourth movie, masterpiece. But anyway.
Logan, do you have any experience with this? Were all the kids at your school wearing Tokyo Drift shirts?
I don't remember that.
Did your grandpa go see it?
No, my dad
check
watched
out
it.
these Japanese people.
My dad did watch this film, and that was my previous exposure to it. Is he just randomly watched this at one point? It's like, hey, this movie's good. You should watch it. And I was like, okay. And then I did, and I remember we had it like DVR'd somehow on like Dish Network. It was on TV, and I DVR'd it at one point, and I had watched it that way. And so rewatching it this time, though, it became apparent that I don't think I ever finished watching it. So I think I saw like 2/3 or 3/4 of this movie, and then I never saw the ending.
What?
Because like
That's
the ending
crazy.
stuff that happens here, I was like, I don't think I remember this. I remembered a lot of the opening parts, but I did not remember the ending. Now that I've seen it, though, complete from front to back as of today, because I watched it earlier this morning when I woke up, I have to say this is one of the worst ones in the series that we've seen so far, which is why I'm glad that Mike is here, because I knew that this was going to be a surprising twist.
I totally thought you were going to love this movie.
It's actually like not surprising, to be honest.
I
but
think that this movie...
Well, I thought after Too Fast, I thought like you would be.
Well, here's the problem. So we've kind of set things up this way to where we would watch this chronologically, and it would come in where it's at. And I feel like partially that has hurt because this movie is greatly boring compared to what some of the recent ones we have now seen.
I see.
And that does not mean. And beyond that, though, I just also don't think it's very good. I have problems with. I mean, we can get into all this as we move forward. Protagonist is boring. I think the villain's boring. I think the chemistry between the two lovers at the center of this is very forced and not enticing whatsoever. I don't know. There's a lot of problems I have with this movie. Han is, and the other thing too, I think the saving grace would be Han. And this was the thing that I guess stood out to me watching this, because he's the person that you know in this movie. The way, and maybe this is something that Max can speak to, since I know him and I have been watching all of them in this order. Mike, you probably can't speak to this as much. It was apparent to me that this was Han's first movie, because it is. And he doesn't have all the idiosyncrasies of the character that he has in later movies. He just kind of comes off as man in Japan who has a lot of cars and money. And now we have the context for how he has all of that, but his character itself doesn't feel very developed in this movie yet. And I feel like Sung Kang, or what is his name?
Yeah.
I feel like Sung Kang kind of gets more comfortable in that role in the future movies, and he kind of fits that Han mold better. In this movie, I don't feel like he really does yet. And that doesn't mean I think his performance is bad, but I feel like his character just... It's clear that this is the first introduction of his character, even though for us this is now his fourth appearance. So yeah, even the Han stuff I was a little bit thrown off with to some degree. So
Interesting.
I will say, so to talk more about how we have watched these movies, I did enjoy knowing certain things in retrospect, like when he's like, oh, I have money, and there's certain other callbacks, like I mentioned before, where he's like, this is my Mexico. I'm like, oh, cool. That's like a cool callback to when Dom jets off to Mexico at the end of the first film. Like, there's cool callbacks, mainly to the original film and this one.
Because also, there was really only the original and
yes.
Too Fast.
And then other things they sort of wrote in later. Like, I guess here's a good way I could describe it. Something like Better Call Saul, where it incorporates things that were mentioned in Breaking Bad. Things were mentioned in Breaking Bad involving Saul's character, and then they loop those things back in with Better Call Saul, the prequel series, and it's like, oh wow, it's almost like they knew ahead of time what they were going to do with this. That doesn't come across here as much to me. Like it feels like, I don't know if that makes any sort of sense, the comparison I'm trying to draw here. The things like him being like, I have money, and these like, it doesn't feel like Justin Lin was planning movies down the road. Like, we know how he gets that money and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that makes any sort of sense.
I mean, we're just diving right into Han. It feels like,
yeah, sure. Let's just start with this.
I wrote, my note down was like, Han has a smoothness and matureness about him that definitely stands out from the rest of the cast. I mean, that makes sense.
Everybody else is high schoolers.
We're dealing with high schoolers, and when
high schoolers
Yakuza
that
nephew.
have Tobey Maguire syndrome that all look like they're 30.
Yes. So obviously that sets them apart. But then having this weird context of the other movies, because we're watching them in this order and I've seen them a bunch, I wrote down as like, we kind of see why Han dives into like just dating a bunch of different women and hanging around and working with the Yakuza and things like that. It's because Giselle died, who knows. So like I kind of reverse see this push of a life of leisure and abandon and working and stuff. But I think the cooler thing is Han takes in Sean and he has that whole speech of, I care about character and I want that around me more. And I think that's something that ties into the whole family vibe before we actually really have fully established family, because it's the third movie. So I think that's why Han was so endearing and a fan favorite back in Tokyo Drift before he makes all these appearances in future movies.
Before he dies and
before he
two-thirds
dies
of the way
stuff.
through this movie, which is also something we need to talk about as well.
That's the Letty problem for you, I would think. Same thing now. And so it's just, I think that's good. It's not the same connection Dom and Brian have, but Han carries this film pretty much on his back, along with the setting, I think, and the style of driving.
The setting is great, yeah. I think Tokyo really carries the film in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but at least that's what I think about Han. It's interesting to watch all these movies in chronological order now and have a little bit of context for Han in that way. And I think it reverse explains his actions. Like before, it was just like, I'm a cool guy with money and I like hanging out with women. And now you're watching it and going, he's a chip-chewing chameleon man who dated Gal Gadot and he's sad that she died off an airplane.
Well, see, I guess that's one of the things I'm talking about, that like with hindsight or technically future sight, because all these movies came out afterward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the sense in this movie that his character is living this lifestyle because he's sad or because he's...
I think the Mexico thing is kind of...
A little bit, yeah, to a degree. There's that one scene where he kind of hints to it, but that's about it. Otherwise, it just... You get the sense that he's doing this stuff because he likes it. Even when he rips off the Yakuza, he's like, what did you do? Why would you do that? And he's like, well, that's just the lifestyle we live. Like, he's just doing these things just because he feels like that's what he does. Yeah, I'm going to be with a bunch of women. Yeah, I'm going to get in with all these scuzzy schemes. It doesn't feel like he's diving into this stuff as a way to numb the pain of Giselle dying in the previous movie. He's just doing it because, yep, this is who I am. This is my personality. And I think that's apparent because obviously they didn't know 3 movies down the line when they made this one what his arc would be, and so it's kind of a way to explain why he is this way in Tokyo Drift, but I just don't feel like it works out as good. And obviously if they knew what was going to happen in Fast 6 further down the line with his character, I think they could have approached some things better in this one, and that's what I'm saying. It doesn't feel as cohesive as the example I used before with like a Breaking Bad and a Better Call Saul, where it was like, wow, this feels like one unified thing that they made at the same time. This doesn't feel like that to me.
No, it's definitely retroactively pieced together.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the Han discussion, just like, I think they did enough like mystery and allure with him to where if they wanted to go back to it, they could go back to it. I don't think there was anything set in stone of like, oh yes, they like, maybe they had it set in stone. They're like, oh yeah, he used to chill with Dom and his crew and stuff like that. Maybe that was like the one connective tissue there. But I think other than, because obviously the end of the movie, obviously.
Right. Yes.
But other than that, I don't think there was anything there future. I mean, this was supposedly, you said direct to DVD, right? I mean, like, were there even going to be plans for a 4th movie, like a 5th movie, whatever? I don't know. So,
I think the franchise was kind of on a movie by movie basis at this point.
Yeah,
because it
so
was.
I mean, I think they were just playing with the cards that they had dealt, and like were setting things up if they could, but then also ending things if they couldn't make another one.
Again, though, that's the weird thing about where this falls. I feel like if this was just chronologically the 3rd film, and they could have told the story. It's so weird because I just don't feel like this fits into where we're at right now.
I think the one thing we haven't said
coming off of Fast 6
is clearly, I think I said this in our last episode with Mario in Fast and Furious 6, clearly Justin Lin loves Han. And so he did whatever he could to keep Han around in all of his other movies.
Yeah, but I also think the crowd reception too is that like people wanted to see more.
People
Han
love Han,
also.
And I think they did whatever they could to keep him in there. About the whole direct to DVD and future movie things, I found this interview researching this movie to kind of dig into the DVD thing. There was the Universal Pictures co-president of production, Jeffrey Kirschenbaum. Quote, the talk internally was that the franchise was played out. At that point, we were weighing whether to go straight to video or not for future sequels. We weren't sure what we were going to do, end quote. So they talked about, that the movie had tested well, Tokyo Drift, but Universal thought, this article says, that the sequel needed more pop. And so this is the fun twist. So they go to Vin Diesel and they're like, hey, can you just make a cameo and we'll just see how it goes? And Vin Diesel made a trade. He's, instead of being paid, Vin Diesel's like, I want to own Riddick. And so Vin Diesel got the rights to the Chronicles of Riddick to make this 15-second cameo at the end. And apparently the response in the preview test audiences was so, quote, electric. It was like a rock concert. The audience went ballistic. And so it was actually then that they thought we need a reboot with the original cast, and that's what creates Fast and Furious and launches it into everything, was this one cameo, this one trade for the Chronicles of Riddick, which pivoted it from direct to DVD to we'll put this in movie theaters, was Vin Diesel's 15 seconds.
What a negotiation on Vin's part. Hey, can you make a 15-second cameo? I don't know. Can you give me the rights to an entire film franchise?
You don't have to pay me.
That's pretty good.
Great.
That's pretty funny on his part.
Yeah.
There's a lot of avenues we could go with the discussion on this one. I'm trying. Mike, is there anything here that stood out to you as the person who likes this movie? I guess let's go to that because I don't want this episode to be a list of things that I kind of have a problem with necessarily, because that's kind of what a lot of my notes are. Again, I want to stress, I don't hate the film. I think it just is, there's nothing special that I really like outside of the location. I do like the focus on drifting. But even that, I feel like, I don't know.
I was gonna say, I think it's pretty crazy or unique that they based this entire movie on a car maneuver. The entirety of the driving style is just it's the only one that's like that. None of the other ones are technically like that. I mean, street racing, but you could do that with it. This,
I like that too. Yeah.
Popularized drifting, put it in everybody's everyday,
and it's so over the
vernacular,
top too. The funniest scene in this movie is where Sean and, is it Neal, you said, right? That's
Neal,
her name?
Yeah.
When he's like, oh, I've never seen you drift before, and she's like, that's because you never asked. And then the next scene
Yeah.
is them
Damn,
going through the hills, and it's just 6 or 7 cars just all drifting in unison. I'm like, okay, this is real goofy and dumb. And they're just drifting through all the streets together as a big unit. It's so silly looking.
I think that's and again, this is coming back to the kind of stuff that I like now. I think that's kind of the reasons why I that scene is one of the reasons why I love it. Love this movie. It's just that it's just corny, good, fun family movie. Or family. Well, it is a family movie.
It is a family.
But as opposed to the crazy action stuff that it is now, or even in the other two, it's cars and what is it called? Point Break with cars or whatever. It's I think I preferred this goofy, just kid who gets in trouble and has to go across the country or across the world in order to escape trouble to then just get into more trouble. It's just like kind of goofy and weird, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like it's definitely like one of the weird. It's the weird one out of all of them, but I think it has like with Han too. Like Han is. I mean, we already talked about that, I guess, but like I feel like his character really like I don't know, like he does like put the whole film on his shoulders and stuff like that. It's super good. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about Sean, because I think that's where a lot of my problems come from. I think on paper, the idea of, this American kid having to go to Japan because he's a street racer and he's having to move from everywhere he's ever been in, and he's getting perennially in trouble. I think that's a good, fine plot. I don't have problems with the broad story beats of this movie. Sean, though, and his portrayal and how he's characterized in this film, he's just greatly uninteresting. He is not
I don't
an
disagree.
enjoyable character to follow for the runtime of this film.
I like Sean.
Why do you like Sean?
Okay.
Then? Let's hear it from you then.
I find just the simple nature of that premise of a high schooler in trouble has to go to Japan for whatever. I find that endearing, and I find like his few character qualities of he always stands up for himself, and which gets him either into trouble or by the end of the film, so he can stand up and do what is right. I enjoy that. It's very simple, right? The premise is boy in trouble learns how to become a responsible young man. Like, it's super simple. I just enjoy that. And I think him being so bold as to like challenge DK to a race without even having a car available to him. Like, I just think those kind of character traits are nice and fun. And I think his delivery is just that right level of cocky Southern boy energy. And putting that in Tokyo, I think is a good juxtaposition. That's why they wrote it this way, fish out of water. Mm-hmm. I just find it, he connects with all the characters well too, I think. He's a moldable piece and fits wherever he needs to go.
Yeah, Sean is like the one thing that I probably like dislike about the movie. I don't like him as I actually, my last note here, I put definitely still my favorite movie from what I can remember. Even if the lead is forgettable, I actually don't remember his name because I didn't remember his name until you guys just started talking about him during this podcast. But like every other character, like even like DK, like I think is way more like of an attractive character. Like see his story of like, oh, it's just I mean, you wonder like why he is the way he is because he's like running things with his uncle with the Yakuza, and like why is he doing that? It's like his dad died or whatever, and like that stuff is way more interesting, and figuring out like his character and why he is the way he is way more interesting than anything that I feel like Sean does, because Sean is just a punk kid who just gets into trouble all the time, and then randomly is just like, oh, my friend died, I'm gonna do the right thing finally because somebody died. Like it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like,
I don't know what Sean's arc is in this movie.
Yeah,
his arc
whatever.
His arc is that by the end of the movie, rather than getting in trouble, he just decides to face up rather than leave. But in the previous instances where he left where he left when he got in trouble, he was more having to leave because his mom was kind of forcing him to. So it's not even this issue where he's not been standing up in certain situations because he doesn't want to. It's just because he's not had a say in the matter. And now this time he's like, I'll stand up for this in this situation I created, and I'll race this man with my newfound drifting powers. And then he just wins the race, and that's kind of just it.
Well, he makes that jab at his dad about how his dad ran away. And so he clearly has a beef with his parents separating, which then causes him to be a rambunctious youth and causes to get into big enough trouble.
That's the other thing, too. Too many cliches with his character, his arc.
Yeah.
Like, my dad, I didn't have a dad growing up. He ran off, and now I'm this rambunctious teenager. And so that's one character arc for him. And then he's got young fish out of water, doesn't know. Like, I feel like we've seen broad strokes of this movie in so many other things. Like, it's like the Karate Kid with cars, basically. Like, oh, I don't know karate, I gotta fight the bullies, but then I will be trained by
they even make a Karate
man.
Kid reference.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I'll
was
be
gonna say, there's
trained
no
by
wax
this
on or wax
Yeah,
off
they
with
do.
drifting.
Yeah. And then he gets trained in the art of drifting, and then he faces the bad boy again, and then he beats him, and it's a very played out kind of arc in that sense. And this is the most formulaic Fast and Furious movie, I would say, by far.
It's certainly the lowest stakes. I don't know
That
about
too.
Yeah, I don't formulaic. I mean, I think the first one and the second one are also fairly.
The first one's different in the sense that, I mean, it's kind of cliche that he lets him go at the end and we're friends now, but
the first one's totally, it's the whole like cop goes undercover and
yeah,
for this whatever. It's like, yeah.
But then they
so many
jump in
movies
front
have
of a
done
train for some reason and he wrecks.
Yeah, but back to Sean really quick. I think he clearly acts out as an act of rebellion and just gets tossed around wherever he goes. That's what he does. And I think him actually challenging DK kind of shows. He makes this line, I want to say it's to Bow Wow, to Twinkie. We keep calling him Bow Wow, but to Twinkie, he's like, I'm not going to be here long enough for you to remember my name or to remember your name. Like, he clearly plans on just getting in trouble and getting out of here. And the first thing he does when he's there, first night of school or whatever, is goes out and street rates, stays late. Like, he's ready to just quit. He's given up on himself and his family in this situation. And I think his arc is eventually learning family, standing up for people and yourself and facing people, bullies in your life. And yes, super cliched, just a classic, story that all the movies, Karate Kid, so on and so forth. But I think his arc is a bit more than just mom made me move with my dad, who I don't have a relationship with. But him and his dad have that whole forced, again, cliche, just, I'll stand up with you, son, and you gotta let me face this myself.
I don't like his dad.
I don't like his dad too.
Here's the thing. The one reason why I didn't like his dad is because his child. All right, you're telling me that, okay, Max, you're gonna have a child, all right, and then they're gonna grow up. They're gonna be a punk kid, just like this kid, and you're gonna be split up with Abby. You're gonna be in Japan. Just whole thing. You're in the Navy. All this stuff, right? Prostitutes will come out of your house when your son gets in there, all that kind of stuff. All right, so your kid is a butthead, all right? Your kid is a butthead, and he does all this garbage and gets in trouble still in Tokyo, and then you tell him, you can't do this, you're going to go to jail. But then, through that trouble, he gets in trouble with the Yakuza, which is a way bigger problem than anything else that he is doing. And then he goes back and he's like, I gotta do this. I gotta fight the Yakuza. And then his dad's like, okay. Just lets him go.
I love his plan for a resolution. I love it. He's like, I will go to the Yakuza and say, let's race. Like, that is so Fast and Furious.
That is great. I love that. That is great. It's just the dad character just being like,
oh, sure, yeah.
You could just go on ahead into gang territory and maybe get yourself killed. And just like,
as long as he doesn't have to leave Japan and get kicked out and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If he dies, okay, that's fine. You just can't leave here.
Yeah, while cliched, I think Sean, I think he works, at least for me. And maybe that's some rose-tinted glasses also kind of coming into this. But I don't have a big beef with Sean. I enjoy him enough.
I just think there's tidbits from other characters that I feel like are more interesting than what Sean has to. Even like Neal being like the outsider and having to grow up
Gaijin?
in Japan or what. Yeah, like I feel like that's even more like I would rather invest my time in a story like that.
I want to talk about Neal. Let's get into her here first. Before we do, I want to say one final thing on Sean. And don't tell me, Mike. I don't know if Sean appears in the other movies, and that's something I'm greatly looking forward to finding out. That is one thing I do not know, and I'm very interested in seeing if he pops up again. I assume he will, but I don't know for certain.
So, Mike, Logan had the same thing about Eva Mendes from Too Fast, Too Furious. He's like, does she show back up? I'm like,
I don't know if anybody in these movies shows back up again. I assume they have to because Vin Diesel shows up in Japan because his boy got killed in an accident, which is all of a sudden now
accident.
Yeah, which we have to talk about that specifically. We will. Let's talk about Neal real fast. Let's talk about Neal because I think her character is largely fine in this movie. I don't think there's any chemistry whatsoever between her and Sean, and so I think I feel like it almost would have been better if they were put together just as like friends rather than trying to make them feel like they're coming together as like falling for each other in some sort of way, because I don't get any sort of chemistry on that level between them.
I mean, I kind of do in a weird way. Like, I don't know. I also think it's just there, like that relationship is just there to stir the pot with DK, where like, you know, Han says that, you know, you're his kryptonite, you know?
But that's the other thing I don't understand is it's never really shown in these movies that she likes him. Like, why is she with him? Like,
with DK?
Yeah, because the whole movie she's kind of speaking poorly about him and is like, no, stay away from him. He's a bad man. Don't go near him, blah, 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 blah. Like, there's never any instances where you see her actually being with him that she's like, yeah, this is my boyfriend or whatever, and I like this guy.
I think it's an abusive relationship and control.
I think, yeah, I think they also kind of mention it where like her family like knows each other.
His grandmother raised her.
Yeah, something like that, and they probably just grew up together.
It's almost like they were dating out of obligation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And security and stuff. I think if anything is cliched in this movie, and a lot of stuff is, I think their relationship, Sean and Neela, I think is the most cliche of it. Is just the foreigner, you know, falls in love with the girl in class. Out of it, I mean, I like Neela's character. I think she's, you know, she's cool. I like Neela, dope, and she's also a capable driver and all that stuff. But beyond that,
I also like that all these races, like one of the things that you win is a girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what the two major races in this movie, outside of the first one where he's just crashing into everything.
Winner gets me.
Yeah, the first race season and the final race season, winner gets the girl, essentially.
I was like,
well, the final race wasn't, the stakes were not winner gets Neela. The stakes were
sort of. I mean, that wasn't
loser
specific.
Leaves town.
Yeah, but I mean, the implication is that she's gonna have to. If I should also say this, I don't call this man DK. I call him Asian Justin Timberlake because that's what he
Asian
calls
JT.
him. Quote, "You're like the Justin Timberlake of Japan."
Yep, JT of Japan. I got that right.
That's a line I wrote down. So I just called this man Justin Timberlake the whole movie. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. The implication is that if Justin Timberlake wins the race, then she's gonna have to stick around him and stay with him. Like, she shows up to the race in Yakuza Man's car, does she not? I think she gets out of his car there.
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, well, maybe not. But she's hanging around them the whole time. Anyway, yeah. They kind of are racing women.
She was at the bar where he proposed the race.
But that was after she went with DK to save Sean from being shot in the street.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's talk about, I mean, while we're just talking about characters, I think the only other one to really bring up here would be Bow Wow, Twinkie.
Yeah, Twinkie.
And there's not a whole lot to say. I
like him.
He's great.
I will say I love that I just love that they come up with these characters and they're like, hey, I have an idea for a character, and they're like, cool, what hip hop star would you like to play this character? Because we now got Bow Wow, Tyrese, we've got Ludacris, and we've got Ja Rule, and then you've said that the two guys whose names we always forget from Fast
Don
Five
Omar and Tego something.
Yeah, they're musicians as well. Like, this is like a core staple of Fast and Furious, for better or worse, honestly. Like, you come up with a character, there's a 50% chance they might be a musician that you're looking to cast in that role. So maybe we could get real Justin Timberlake in Fast X or something.
Was this made during when like Bow Wow was like really big? Or
I
was
think
it
it was on-
was it the tail end of it?
Like, what are we calling really big Bow Wow? Like,
I think like Mike. I think
think
Mike
like
is really
Mike.
big.
so like Mike would have been like 5 or 6 years before.
But
this.
then
I
he
wanna say
did he
like
did he
Mike
not
was-
have like a TV show too? Am I crazy?
I think Lil Romeo did.
So
I
Bow
remember
Wow
correctly.
was in, I don't know.
I think
why
Lil
this is-
Romeo had a show on
Like
Nick.
Mike was 2002 and Tokyo Drift was 2006, so 4-year gap.
Okay, yeah. So it was when he was kind of
I mean, I definitely knew Bow Wow
big,
from
relevant.
Like Mike, like 100%.
I mean, I owned some of his albums as a youngster.
a lot. That basketball song, listen to that one a lot. There was Logan, I thought you would really connect with Twinkie. He was selling Jordans. There was that Jordan scene. He was like, I got Jordans, they ain't even out yet.
Okay. I'm glad you asked this. So, when he
those
said I got Jordans here and he held those up, I was like, what the heck are those? I've never seen those in my entire life. And this is probably a continuity error, almost 1,000%. Is that when does this movie take place, Max?
Like chronologically in the
In the timeline.
let me pull it up.
Pull it up, because when he pulls this is again pulling me out of the movie, Justin Lin. This movie
my
doesn't take
gosh.
place after Fast
Dang it.
6.
The
Don't
shoes
lie to
ruined
me.
everything.
You got the flip phones, you got these Jordans. He pulls out the Jordans, and I was, as the person who knows Jordans, I was like, I've never seen these before in my entire life. What the heck shoe is this? Is this even a real shoe? And of course, I look up Tokyo Drift Jordans, and it pulls them up. It is the red suede Air Jordan 21. They retail for nearly $1,000 at resale.
Okay.
So
when did
when
did those shoes come out though?
So they would have been, that he says in the movie, these are the new model. Not even LeBron James has got these. These are new. So Air Jordan 21s would have come out that year, because I believe we're on Air Jordan 35 or 36 right now.
Okay.
And so this movie came out 16 years ago. So yeah, that tracks. Actually, the 37 might be this year. So
Don't worry about it. So what he really had there was whatever the exclusive shoe that LeBron James could not get in 2014.
yeah, no, the shoes would have been almost 10 years old by that time. And he's like, not even LeBron can get these.
Okay,
Bro,
but
those
also
are
they
bricks.
like fought over an iPod,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That too. Yeah. All these things rip me out. Rip me
come
out.
on.
You didn't
Which-
you didn't like them fighting over the iPod? That was amazing.
No,
Come
I
on.
like that. No, this is what I would like to say is, again, similar to the same things I liked from Fast 1 and Too Fast, is I like the early 2000s vibe of this movie. The problem is I'm trying to suspend my disbelief and remember that this comes after Fast 6, which it doesn't. Don't tell me that.
I like that his suspension of disbelief breaks when he has to believe that this takes place after 6. Not
We're watching them in
not when
chronological
they're doing all
order.
the stuff in 6. They're trying to remember the stunts in 6. I don't want to say they're on 1.
Planes,
Yeah,
the plane, the tank.
Yeah, he doesn't have to suspend disbelief for that, but by God, we've got flip phones and iPods. And it's 2014.
When Vin Diesel tackles a woman across a bridge and lands on a car, that's real to me. But when they all have flip phones and it's 2014, you're ripping me out of the cinematic
That's
experience.
hilarious.
But I mean, I feel like it's less of like, is this set in 2014 or whatever, and rather that the other movie is set in 2006, and maybe they just fucked up during that time and not this time.
Well, this
You know what I'm
movie
saying?
was filmed in 2006 or
That's what I'm
2004, 2005, 2006, but retroactively they've made it come after Fast 4, 5, and 6, and they've said that it takes place in 2014 chronologically. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Look at everything in this movie.
Yeah.
You clearly filmed this movie 10 years before 2014.
And
So-
what are you gonna do? You
Which,
can't-
again, it's a dumb thing to get hung up on. I'm not actually hung up on it, but it is very, again,
it's
very
silly.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I wrote down. I wrote, the vibe, look, and fashion styles of people in this movie suggest that it should definitely not take place after Fast 6. But I did write after that. But I do like being back in an early 2000s time period again. This is nice.
One of my first notes: we back in the early aughts, baby. Like, let's go.
Yeah, and then I wrote about the Jordans. I mean, while we're just talking about random one-off things, we'll get back to some sort of structure here in a second. One of my early notes when I was watching, I wrote, how can you send someone to a new school in a foreign country and expect them to learn literally anything when they don't know the language? Like the core plot of this movie is like, this kid's going to go to juvie. We'll send him to another country where he learns. And then he sits down in, I don't know, history class, and the lady's speaking Japanese and he doesn't know what she's saying or writing on the board. How does he learn? Why does he do his homework? How does any of this work? I don't understand. Doesn't make sense.
I like this is Logan's not going to have a single issue with the rest of the series, but my God, this whole movie is suspension of disbelief.
I do want to say one of my other notes, and this kind of gets back to Twinkie here, and then we'll get back on him if there's anything else we want to say. I wrote down, this is why Mike likes this film. There's a Hulk car.
There is a Hulk. I wrote a note here. It says, Hulk car is good.
I wrote Hulk car, baby. And actually, so that car used to be on display down here in Florida at Universal Islands of Adventure by the Hulk roller coaster. So I've seen that car in person. Super fun and cool. I love the reveal of that car. The elevator thing, cycling all these fancy looking cars, Bowa standing there getting all giddy. And then what is the song? I want to say, this is probably wrong. I always think it's Family Force 5, but I don't think it is. But that song comes on, and it's just like, yes, this is my kind of car reveal. I love the Hulk car. With the purple carpet and the Hulk decals and the fists and stuff.
The arms.
It's
also,
so good.
I thought it was dented in at first. I was like, why has this man got dents all over his car? And I was like, oh, wait, that's jutting out, not in.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty wild how many like Hulk things are in this, because there's one point too where like they're practicing drifting and Han is reading like an old Incredible Hulk comic book.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I was like, what? So
I wonder when that
while
Hulk
the men are
movie
fishing.
Yeah.
was the Ang Hulk?
That was like
that would have come out like 2002 or 3. I think.
2003.
I think I would say, if anything, it might have been almost the same year that the Incredible Hulk movie came out. Like
no,
the
that
one
would have
with
been
Ed Norton.
that was after
been
Iron
later.
Man. That Iron Man was out in
Yeah.
08. I think it was 08 or
Oh,
09.
was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was 2008. They were only like a month or two apart, Hulk and Iron Man.
Yeah.
One more thing while we're talking about the general era of this film too. One thing I also wrote down that I just have to call out, and we could talk more about the music here, because you talked about the song that kicks on when they first get to the drifting parking garage. I love the opening race of the film too, with I think it's Clay, and I wrote the thing I wrote is Kid Rock music. Baby, we're back in the 2000s.
Yep. I
We're playing
wrote.
ball with the ball while they're racing through this neighborhood.
I also wrote a note about that. I wrote, Kid Rock during the race is quote unquote chef's kiss. So, by far, what is hilarious about it is that there's a moment where you think like, oh, they could probably end this scene right now. And then they just played the entire song. It's amazing.
It just keeps going on and on. And you're like, dang, they're really using the whole Kid Rock song here.
Yeah, that was great. That was probably the best use of racing, and then the song choice. It was the best combo for sure. They used it all in the beginning.
We need to talk about Han again, and we need to talk about him dying in a fiery blaze. And this is going to incorporate some things again. I feel like Mike's here in an episode that's weird, because this has so much. This episode, I feel like before some of the other ones we've done, has so much to do with what's come before. At least with my own reactions and responses to what we have seen in this picture.
Yeah.
I do think. So obviously Fast 6 ends with them drifting through the streets, and that was cool to see. And the thing that was very cool about that for me is when that scene was happening, I was like, this looks very familiar. I think I've seen this before. And then
at the end of the movie. Okay.
No, in the middle of the movie when they're running away from the Yakuza, when they're running away from. Yeah,
you said in Furious 6.
In Fast 6 at the end of the movie, yes, when it cuts to Japan at the post-credit scene or whatever.
The Shibuya crossing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that whole scene, when that scene happened again in this, I was like, wait a minute. I think this looks familiar. I think I have maybe seen this before. Because it's not a 1-to-1, but it's pretty close, obviously. And I was like, is this what this is? Or is he about to wreck and die? And then sure enough, he wrecks and blows up. I was like, okay, wow. They really did that in the middle of this movie. So I totally didn't remember that was a thing when I had watched this the previous time. I don't know. Okay, let me say this. Even aside from the fact that they later make it to where Jason Statham is the man who kills him, I think Han's death in this movie is very out of nowhere. Because
that I don't think.
I
feel like
disagree with that.
I feel like if the Yakuza would have killed him, like that would have almost made more sense. Like it would have raised the stakes that much, or maybe not the Yakuza. When I say Yakuza, I guess I'm just applying that to DK and his boys too, because they're like Yakuza light essentially. If they would have been the ones that caused him to wreck, or have been the ones that made him,
they do.
The person that hits him, he just turns a corner and then a car hits him, right?
Yeah, but it's because
but
they're
I mean
in
that
a
chase happened because they came to the garage, and
I'm saying if they would have spun him out, or if they would have explicitly ran him off the road in some sort of way, rather than a stray car coming out of nowhere and blasting into him, then that would have almost been a better death. Just looking at this movie on its own, because that would have raised the stakes then, I think, for Sean and Neela and all the rest of them. Like, holy crap, we're really dealing with some rough people. They just killed our friend. Holy crap. Instead, it took the power out of it for me again. And I was trying not to imagine this being Jason Statham being the one who kills him, even though it is eventually. That's all retroactive. So the way I was trying to view it was that it really was just a random stray car that hit him, and then he flipped over and he blew up and he died. But even in that sense, it mainly just makes it feel like he just out of nowhere, just boom, blows up. He's out of the movie now.
Totally disagree.
Yeah, I kind of disagree on that. I mean, like, if you're in a car chase and, like, they are the ones who are chasing you and they make you go into this road and then a random car hits you while you're doing that, like, I feel like that is entirely his fault. That is definitely the death that...
You mean it's the people's chasing him's fault? Like, he wouldn't have done that if he wasn't being chased, is what you're saying.
Yeah, essentially.
No one's drifting through Shibuya.
Yeah.
I think actually having him, so at the time, 2006, pre-Jason Statham, I think having Han crash into a stranger actually makes it more real for Sean, Neela, because they're running away from DK, this problem, and that's what Sean's done his whole life, is run away from problems and just start all over. And having it just come out of the blue and take away this father figure, this friend for them, you don't know when you're going to go kind of mentality. And that's when Sean bucks up. And again, that's friend dies cliche, like, now I have to stand up and face the bully. But that's the turning point for Sean of realizing I can't run away from my problems. I have to stand up to them and face them. And not only not face them with violence, which is clearly what DK does, and DK's level of maturity stays the same of pretend, want to be Yakuza and, trying to please his uncle. But Sean going and facing, returning the money, or, returning what was already yours, and taking responsibilities for his actions, that's a whole pivot out of this whole high school, I'm a punk mentality to I'm a man and I'll face my problems. And I think that's pretty good. And I think if you just had DK like ram him off the road, or another guy just come up and shoot him or whatever, then it's just like DK's the bad guy.
I feel like it would have created a larger stakes in that final scene. Like as it is,
I think the stakes were as high as they could have gone.
DK doesn't feel like a compelling antagonist, because his whole anger stems from the fact that Han was screwing him over. So once Han's dead, it's like, well, he really has no lingering anger with Han about that.
It's not because Han was screwing him over. It's because he was embarrassed by his uncle.
Well, sure, but Han dying kind of ends all that. So then what's his main beef with Sean? It's stay away from my high school girlfriend, sir.
But again, embarrassed him in front of everybody. Type of mentality. Someone showing him up and stepping in.
I'll say this too. I mean, if it was just this, like DK just rams Han off the thing, I feel like you would also say that it's just some like cliche thing too.
And that,
like,
Logan, if DK just like went out and killed him, that would be the same problem you've had with Too Fast and 5 of we have to make him as, this is where we escalate and make him, how evil is he? Really, DK's not evil. He's just a whiny punk kid.
He's just as much of a punk kid as the main
that's
character.
A good point. That's a good point.
But
now
then
we have
retroactively,
I was going to say, now we have to talk about the. I was going to say, now we have to talk about the other angle of this, though. What?
So this is the great,
beautiful. I don't know what you mean.
This is the great part about this being retroactive, because watching these movies in release order, being in that theater, you're just. The Rock's been in 2 movies at this point. Like, the series is transformed. And you just see Jason Statham get out of a car, threaten Dominic Toretto, throw the cross, and blow up the car. You're like, yes, this is the coolest, most awesome thing that Fast and Furious has done at this point. They're going to fight Jason Statham now. Like, let's go.
I like that they're going to fight Jason Statham, but retroactively changing the events of this point in the movie, I am not so sure about. Like,
no, it's great.
They could have actually, if they,
it's amazing.
What they could have done is they could have cut to, I don't know, where were they in Fast 5? Brazil, to the inside of a casino, and he offs the 2 guys that nobody cares about. And then he calls Dom. Like, that would have at least made sense. Like, for me to have seen Fast 6 and how that ends, and then for me to jump into this, and I'm supposed to believe that this stray car that just all of a sudden he turns a corner and blam! How was Jason Statham there? How did he know that he was going to come down that street? How did he know they were running from the Yakuza?
You're going to find out.
You're going to find out.
You're going to find out.
You got to watch 7.
Yeah.
Apparently. And this is, and again, I didn't want to get too deep into this because obviously I do have to watch 7. But even Dom's appearance at the end of the movie was a little bit odd for me because clearly, well, for me, the reason in my mind Dom is there at the end of this movie is because Han's dead. So he's going to Japan now to kind of figure out what happened, and like his friend died. So he's going there. He's clearly only in Tokyo because Han died. And what's the first thing he does? He's like, hey, I'm just going to go race some boys. I'm like, Dom, shouldn't you be trying to, and again, I'll say this. I feel like that's going to be a scene in Fast 7, that race. The race that movie ends on, I feel like will be a scene in Fast 7, and they'll explain why he goes there to race him and those sorts of things. I feel like that stuff is going to be explained. So my questions aren't really...
Yeah.
My complaints, per se, are just with what I've seen up until this point. And obviously, all of this could change after we watch the next one.
I hate how you guys are watching this movie series.
It's been really fun.
Yeah, I think for you, Max, it's fun, but for Logan, who this is your first time watching all of these,
I think this is wrong.
Is wild.
I think this is wrong. Max has told me that he thinks this is a good way for me to watch it. I'll personally speak up and say I don't know about that.
No, stop. When we were planning this season, you wanted to watch him like this.
No, that's not what I'm saying. My point is I'm saying if this was a first-time viewership thing, I think I would have had a bigger mark-out moment if we watched 7 and then I saw Jason Statham's introduction and realized retroactively that's what they're doing. I would be like, whoa! But now I have to watch this movie knowing that when he just gets blasted by a car out of nowhere, that I'm supposed to be like, oh, that's Jason Statham right there.
You're in the right there. Like, I've liked watching it in this order simply because of this type of discussion that it's created and watching you, basically subjecting you to like an odd thing. It would be like if you had sat someone down who's never seen anything from Breaking Bad to bring that back in. And you're like, here,
that's
we're
me.
going to start with Better Call Saul, and then we're going to watch Breaking Bad, and then El Camino. Like, that's not how you should watch all of that, but it would be interesting. I'm basically performing an experiment on you.
I think I do think it is it's messing with my head more, and it's making me that much more.
From here on out, everything's in order.
Yes.
So
Hobbs
you'll have a
Shaw
natural
is
progression
kind of,
for the end.
Oh,
Yes.
you guys are watching Hobbs and Shaw, too.
Heck
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
dude.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got
All
Black,
right.
Statham, baby.
Black
Let's go.
Superman Idris Elba in this film.
That's who you should have gotten Mario for that one, because he has things to say about that movie.
So
I'm
does
pretty
Ricky.
Sure.
They both said no to Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah,
The Universal Champions in that film. We have to acknowledge his presence.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if there's anything else I have to say about that. Just the way we've watched it, to make this clear to you, Max, it's not bad, but it very much is like
It is not the
throwing me off
yeah.
greatly at this point in time. And from
Clearly.
here on
It's-
out, it will obviously be very straightforward. And yeah, but
It's
coming
yeah.
back to this has been jarring, to say the least. And I do think it has hurt my appreciation for this film just a bit. I think if we would have watched
Sure.
Too Fast and then I would have watched this, I still would have been used to this, early 2000s era of Fast and Furious movies. Don't ramp my expectations up too much. But you got to think, for me, I have watched the first one and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Too Fast is like, okay, not bad either. And then since then, it's just been this like slow ramp up to where everybody's like, you're gonna get to the good ones. The good ones are coming, yo. And so now we've like reached the crescendo with Fast Five, and I like Fast
I
6.
think you've reached the peak now. It's all downhill from here, baby. Not really.
I think it's 5 that I don't like.
You don't like Brazil?
I don't remember.
The heist?
There's one of
The safe?
there's one of them. It's either 4 or 5 that I don't
4,
like.
right? It's got to be 4. I don't
It
know how
might
you
be
couldn't
4.
like 5.
I always like mix them up because I can never remember, because I always
5's
watch
the one
them,
with The
like-
Rock in it for the first time.
5's the one with the Rock in it for the first time.
And they drag a safe around and blast it
it's
into
the-
police
yeah,
cars.
so it's 4.
Okay.
Sure.
Whew. Whew.
Yeah, it's
We-
definitely 4.
Almost dodged a bullet there.
I don't know if you knew this. 6 is the best one, though.
6 is really good.
So far.
So
Six
far.
is a really
There's a tank in that one.
6 is a really good film.
I want to use Jason Statham in this whole Han death. I want to use that as a pivot point, I think, is a good one for the driving in the movie, the stunts and stuff. And starting with the Shibuya crossing, drifting through Shibuya.
Yeah,
First
that
of
was
all,
great.
Not real, but it is one of the best and most iconic shots probably that Fast
Yeah.
and Furious has ever produced.
How'd those people get out of the way so fast?
Wow, how did they do it? I think, that shot, that whole chase is just
That chase
super,
is-
it's great.
Mm-hmm. As like I think I like some of the earlier like Fast and Furious stuff, and this kind of, I guess watching this kind of proved it too, is because it feels a little bit more like an actual car chase and not like the craziest action scene you'll ever see in your life.
Yeah.
Like you don't really get car chases like that. I mean, like that is with actual real cars, except for the one thing or whatever. Whereas like a lot of the stuff that comes out later, 4, 5, 6, whatever, and onward is a lot of CGI stuff, So it is cool to see like cars actually moving and doing the racing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think this one has like one of the better ones for sure out of the first 3.
And I know we mentioned it earlier, but I think using the style of driving, drifting, as the kind of crux of the whole movie
Yeah.
keeps it very simple, very stylish. It always looks cool, even when they're learning to do it or racing in the parking garages. So I think that is a really solid anchor for the style of stunts and driving for the whole movie. It's awesome, man. Like drifting is cool. That scene where they come up the elevator and it's like, what's drifting? And they just show you with the one shot. It's like, that's all you
Yeah.
need. And he's like, you need a dictionary. And then the whole quick lesson in it. It's just, that's a great scene to teach the audience what you're going to be watching for the next 90 minutes.
Yeah, one of the things I like in the first race too is that they don't just show the car doing the drifting, they cut to the inside. There's a couple camera shots inside the car that shows DK like throttling the gas in certain ways and changing gears and stuff like that, and like you can tell that he's really interacting with his car a ton to make that happen, which is what you have to do in order to drift like that. And it's not just this like magical thing where it's like you turn the wheel and woo, look at the cars going,
or you got a button and you press it and you go fast.
Yeah, they're actually kind of showing what they have to do in order to drift like that, which is, there's been a lot of inside camera shots in all of these movies, so it's always been consistent in that manner. So it's not that I wouldn't have expected them to show those things, but it makes it that much more grounded in a movie series that is largely not grounded at all. So Yeah.
I think in a way too, I guess how it makes it, the film itself is just more relatable, is that aspect of like, this new kid is learning what drifting is, and you as an audience, like probably at the time, like a lot of people were like, oh, what is drifting or whatever, and then they're learning it right there with the main character, so it makes it a little bit more like you could connect with those characters in that way because you are learning with them, I guess. In a way, I could see that being like why some people like gravitated towards it a lot more.
What do you guys think about all of the different scenes in this movie broadly? Because it is getting away from, you and I, Max, have obviously come off of Fast 6 here, which is tanks and planes and all sorts of other things. This gets back to the roots of street racing. So all of the action scenes per se are just races, whether it be the opening race with the high school jock dude or the first drifting race, and then mainly the ending one, and then the other one were Hondas. Those are the 4 big ones I can think of.
Yeah.
And obviously they incorporate drifting in other ways throughout the film as well. But do you guys have a favorite of those 4, I guess?
I think that like I like the races that are like actually in that parking garage. I think that's like a cool like
I don't know, location
that as
for a
like
race.
that location for the race, and like kind of really exemplifying like how crazy it is to like do these maneuvers is like kind of a cool and interesting thing. Obviously, the car chase where Han dies is also amazing.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the best one. And then I probably like that first race in Tokyo, and then probably the very last one for the movie.
Those are the same 2 I like as well. I don't care for the final race all that much. It feels like apparent too. Like, okay, well, Sean's gonna win this. They already raced before and he lost, so here's his comeuppance. Like it just stakes feel very low. Like it's apparent that he's going to win, and what's on the line isn't anything.
It's not even
that
as
drastic. It's like, okay, well, if he loses, he just has to leave town, which is, I mean, I get that the whole crux of the movie is that you have nowhere else to go, but I don't know.
I did misspeak on that. The first race is my third favorite because with the Kid Rock and stuff. Yes. And also, like, it is a much more, like, that is a much more suspenseful race because they are actually, like, neck and neck for the most part. And it kind of shows his destructive way of driving and how he drives.
And he's racing a Viper in his crapmobile.
Yeah.
And he should not win the race because of that alone. So.
But, yeah.
The final race, the one part of it, because you're right, Logan, the stakes don't feel right because he's going to win. It's almost like a boxing movie or a sport movie. Like, the main character's going to win. But the one thing I do love is how he fuses his love of muscle cars and his new skill and appreciation for like tuning and drifting and stuff. They take Han's car motor and put it inside the Mustang, which kind of brings Han into the race in a way, like that, like spiritual kind of sense, like Han's with you, even though, he just died earlier in the movie. So I like that. It's a good fusion of also Dom and Brian in a way, because, Brian's always in the tuners and stuff, and then Dom always is a muscle. So I like that. That's my favorite part of the final race. But the chase through Shibuya and the parking garage race, because the parking garage just is naturally confined and it's all drifting. So
it's a different type of street race that we've seen compared to all the other movies too. It's very unique.
Yeah. And it has a comedic element to it because the one time we're doing it, watching the whole race, there's another race later where Sean wins. But that one race we see from start to finish, Sean's losing very terribly because he doesn't know how to drift. So there's a comedic element when he comes up to the roof of the garage and the Mona Lisa of drifting is in shambles. So that, and then to use parts from the Mona Lisa at the end when he's the new Drift King, it's actually, again, cliche poetic, but it's nice. And it's fun to have the street race have humor to it outside of Monica or now watch this and then a bridge lifts up,
Yes.
It's good storytelling, I think, to have it be like that.
I think we've naturally touched on a lot of other things. There are some stray points I would like to bring up before we kind of funnel into the end of this episode here. I like the subtle callbacks to him looking to beat people, or not callbacks. I like that he tries to beat people up with wrenches sort of at the start of the movie, or at least it's presented like that, because you know that that's alluding to Dom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. There's a lot of subtle callbacks like that to the OG Fast and Furious movie like that throughout this entire film. The wrench is one thing, which you wouldn't really pick up on, I guess, unless you had seen the original film. But that's it's almost presented in such a way that he's going to beat somebody up with a wrench, and then that's what's going to send him to Tokyo, but that obviously does not happen. The "You Owe Me a Car" line showing up again too happens at one point. And I like that kind of makes Han and Sean's relationship in this film, the roots of their relationship start in the same way as Brian and Dom's relationship, which I do like between the two of them. Like you guys mentioned that Han carries the movie. They try to make the dynamics between Han and Sean the same as Brian and Dom, and it all starts with Han saying that this kid owes him a car now because he wrecked his other one that he let him drive. And so I like that similarity between them. One other thing I have to throw out there, which I thought was the most bizarre thing in this entire movie, and I didn't see anybody else mention it on the internet when I looked it up. And this is just of the era.
Is this going to be another beard thing?
No. This is a deep cut. This is a deep cut sort of thing that you would be like, oh, well, duh, Logan, of course, would bring that up. In the shot where he goes to Han's garage for the first time and he sees everything that Han owns, all the cars that Han owns, and it pans over them, there's one car in his garage that has a G4 decal on it.
Yes.
Which is so...
I saw that.
Bizarre. And I looked this up and I was trying to figure out how that happened or why, and no explanation for it.
Did G4 ever like sponsor races?
No, nothing like that, no.
They've never done anything
just
like
must have been just like a subtle Easter egg shout out to that TV network, which has now been revived. So
weird. I thought maybe they've like sponsored or like sponsor racers or something like that at one point, like during that time period, but I don't know.
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, those are the couple of fun things I wanted to throw in there to go along with the Jordan discussion, which we already had as well. Anyway, we've talked a lot about the stunts and the effects and stuff like that. I feel like we've even talked about the soundtrack. Is there anything either of you wanted to say about that as well?
Oh,
that we haven't naturally touched on?
The Tokyo Drift theme, you gotta love it. That again, that Family Force and Kid Rock, like this soundtrack, love it. That Barracuda song. This is probably the one soundtrack I know the most. I can identify the most songs on it. I also listen to it a lot. I also listen to the soundtrack quite a bit.
What a dork.
I love this soundtrack, man. So I'm a big...
Get in Max's car, he's playing the Tokyo Drift soundtrack.
Sometimes I am.
But you just blasting ball with the ball.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this soundtrack.
I like the music. I mean, the music felt like a key part of the film again, which was nice because it hasn't really felt like that too much the past couple of movies. And I miss that from these earlier 2000s movies. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a bunch of licensed music tracks in your soundtrack. Do it more. Do it more. I mean, don't do it to the degree that some movies nowadays do it. I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy came out and everybody got a little too wild trying to put licensed tracks in their movies.
Those are good songs, though.
Yeah, but
it's good in Guardians how
does
it's
it
implemented.
Yeah.
But like, I'm talking like Suicide Squad came out and they're like, wait, let's put a licensed song in this every 5 minutes. People love that, right? No. When used well, it can be great, and I think they do it to great effect here. Okay, before we get into Legacy and the final wrap-up, best car.
It's got to be the Lancer.
There are a lot of options.
There are a lot of options. Look, I've said it at the top, or I don't know if we said it in the pre-show or if we said it earlier in this episode. There's a Dodge Viper in this film, and it's a red Dodge Viper, and it's driven by this Clay man. And look, that is my favorite car ever. Early 2000s red Dodge Viper. I'm predisposed to love it. So that's my bland default answer, but I'm going to choose something else because that car does not drift in this film. So therefore, I'm going to disqualify it since it does literally nothing other than
Has to drift to count.
Yeah, it also gets wrecked, which is painful to see. My favorite car in this movie, I believe this is what it is. Hans Orange Mazda RX-7 is excellent. I love that car. I love the look of it. Not only is the body cool, but I love the black and orange coloring on it. I am a huge sucker for that color scheme on that car. I thought his car was excellent. It's too bad that Jason Statham ran into it and then blew him up.
This was a Hot Wheel I looked at, and it was very expensive.
Hans' car?
Yeah, Hans. So I could not justify buying Hans' car. Sorry.
How much was it? I'm curious what the Hot
50-ish?
Wheel resale market's like. $50 for a Hot Wheel. Oh my goodness.
50-ish, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the actual. I thought you meant the actual car, and then I thought you were like 50,000, and I was like, what?
No,
it's not
that
terrible.
would be cheaper than the Viper was, as described in the film. So, no, I'm
Vipers
a big fan of the RX-7 and the Lancer, but I really like the Mustang too. At the end
Mustang's
of the movie.
great.
The one they build at the end?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I like it reminds me of Letty's car in 6, where it's kind of all sitting in the back and the front of the car is pretty, flattened. Then I also like the idea of what we talked about earlier of putting, this kind of Nissan tuner engine and drifting in it. But if I had to pick a car, it's definitely I think I have to go with the RX-7, the orange and the black, and doing donuts around ladies and getting their phone number and all, driving at over 187 kilometers an hour or whatever, like they can't catch you. It's a very good car, and it's a shame that it blew up. But also, Hulk car? Really the best car?
I was going to say, I thought Mike would definitely
Touran?
say Hulk car.
No, I mean, like, again, like the Lancer is like one of my favorite cars, just in general. Like how Logan likes to Dodge Viper. The Lancer is actually like legitimately in like my top 5 favorite cars, probably. So it is like by default that will be the car that I would choose. The Hulk car, amazing, it is great. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Max. I like the Mustang a lot. That would probably be. I do also like American muscle cars. So, the Mustang was definitely the one that I liked out of those, even more so than Dom's car. So
Broadly speaking, to all of the cars that are in this movie, and I mean, this is a very obvious thing that they did with this movie, but I do like that all of the cars that are seen in this movie do come from Eastern car manufacturers, and they do come from that part of the world, which is, again, something obvious that they would do, but it makes the appearance of the Mustang later in the movie that much more distinguished, and you're like, oh wow, they've now got an American muscle car that's racing. This is different. This looks a lot more unique compared to everything else we've seen in this movie.
yeah, and they put a tuner engine in it. It's like wild, like super weird, but yeah, it's cool. Like, I think it's really cool that they did that, and I like that they actually like started like testing it, because obviously it wouldn't just work like that,
Yeah.
I thought that was like kind of cool that they did do that process, or showed that they did that process to do it. But
This is why she's spitting.
This movie, more so than a lot of others, you could tell that they were very intentional with the cars that they were choosing to put in these scenes.
yeah,
I think you had to, with the focus being on drifting. Like, you had to be super specific.
but also have like the favorites, like the Lancer and the Skyline were in the last 2 movies, were they not? Like, those were the cars that Paul Walker's
Skyline,
character
yeah,
would
all the
drive.
way.
Yeah, he was driving Skylines all day.
All right, let's wrap up with a discussion about this film's legacy, which I think is
It's a very
interesting.
weird one.
It is a very weird one. I don't know. What would you guys say as people who have now seen this whole franchise? Because I don't know where to. I guess my thoughts, to just put it out there, is I don't know right now how to answer this question. I feel like I need to see the other ones first, to be honest.
I would say for the Fast and Furious diehards, this is amongst their favorite one.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think if you're just a fan of them and just like them, I would say that it's probably mid-tier to lower tier. And then if you just don't like them, then it's probably the worst one. So, but yeah, I feel like the diehard, like Fast and Furious fans, like at the very least respect Tokyo Drift, and they like what it was trying to do with, especially with like, again, like it coming like it's supposedly supposed to be like a direct to video one, and you know, like I think they set out to do something, and they like with the budget that they had, and it worked out. So
I think there are two critical things that are that shape this movie outside of the diehards, like Mike was talking about. Han. This was Han's first Fast and Furious movie. It solidified him as a fan favorite, and so seeing him in 4, 5, and 6 afterward was always a treat. Going through those movies.
I'm sorry, did that confuse people in real time, or was it made apparent?
It was
that they. I mean, I guess you would just have to assume
that he was alive. So it's like, and then as you've kept referring to in the past few episodes, like they keep talking about going to Tokyo. So, you know, that was
you could piece it together as a viewer. That didn't take place beforehand, but
yeah. I think at like upon watching it, you're like, oh yeah, this happens before this time.
Because if you were to go from this to Fast and Furious, where he shows up at the start, I'm sure people in theaters were probably a little thrown off, like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's kind of a cool tease, and then you're like, oh. But the other piece of this legacy is Justin Lin. You know,
yeah,
this was his first Fast and Furious movie, and then he got to do the next 3, and then he comes back later and does, I want to say 9 is this next one.
I think he
and then he showed up on the set of X and then left.
Yes. So, but Justin Lin is responsible for what this series has become, along with Chris Morgan and Vin Diesel and things like that. But this, with Justin Lin, this pivoted the Fast and Furious movie. Like I read earlier, Universal thought the series was done, but Neal saw Better Luck Tomorrow and gave Justin kind of the keys here, keys to the Fast and Furious franchise, and they turned it around. And
did he give him the keys in that cool way that Paul Walker holds
them? Quite possibly. And I just think Justin's work here, you know, it saved the series, and that's this movie's real legacy.
Well, I got to butt in and just say, I think the movie's true legacy at the end of the day is that this is what gave Vin Diesel the rights to the Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's its real legacy. This entire movie was made just so Vin Diesel could acquire the rights to Riddick.
I think that does it for Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at Chapter Select. And then if you'd like to follow Logan on Twitter, you can follow him at Moreman12 and his writing over at comicbook.com. You can follow me on Twitter at MaxRoberts143 and my writing over at maxfrequency.net. If you'd like to follow Mike on Twitter, you can follow him at the Michael J. Ruiz. And Mike does stuff over on Bantam Banter with Ricky Freck, who's been on Chapter Select previously and actually will be on our next episode, which is covering Furious 7. So we'll see you all in 2 weeks for that episode. Until next time, adios. Or maybe sayonara? Should I have said sayonara? Chapter Select is a Max Frequency production. This episode was researched, produced, and edited by me, Max Roberts. Season 4 is hosted by Logan Moore and myself. Season 4 is all about the Fast and the Furious. For more on this season, go to chapterselect.com/season 4. Follow the show at Chapter Select and check out previous seasons at chapterselect.com.